Strap in, because I've been sitting on this story for way too long, and let me tell you, this isn't just a mess, it's a full-blown disaster. The kind that starts off stupid and somehow gets worse. My sister-in-law, let's call her S, has officially cut us off. She told my husband and me that she never wants anything to do with us again over a $10 request from their mom, my mother-in-law. Yep, $10. And the fact that we dared to agree with their mom when S refused? That was apparently unforgivable. Sounds silly, right? Almost laughably petty? Yeah, it's not that simple. Just to set the scene properly, this all takes place in the Caribbean, not the US. And for anyone who gets tripped up by the word money, don't worry, that's just a cultural thing here. Grown adults still call their parents mommy and daddy as a sign of respect. It's pretty common and honestly kind of sweet. Also, our country is still dealing with the aftermath of the pandemic. A huge chunk of the population, around 70%, works in tourism, and only recently have things started opening up again. So when I say times are tough, I mean it. My husband has 3 siblings. Let's break them down. Brother number 1, Bill 1, the kind of guy who'll watch you drown and toss you a rope just to say he did something. Brother number 2, Bill, too sweet as sugar, but too trusting for his own good. And then there's S. Oh boy. There's no clever metaphor for her. Just know she's the kind of drama you wouldn't wish on your worst enemy. S is the youngest of the bunch and the only girl, which meant she was babied beyond belief. After their parents divorced, the spoiling got even worse. She'd play them against each other constantly, and she had zero issue throwing her brothers under the bus whenever it benefited her. My husband and I have been watching S's behavior spiral for years, but trying to bring it up with their parents, Mil, Mom, or Phil, Dad, was useless. They were always riddled with guilt, thinking that since S was the one kid who grew up in a broken home, she deserved to be handled with kid gloves. So every time she threw a tantrum, snapped at someone, or acted selfish, they let it slide. Here's a throwback example. When S was 12, she stole a pair of my sexy underwear straight from our dryer. My husband and I were living in the same duplex as Mil at the time. I actually assumed the dryer ate them, thought it was a lost sock situation, until a month later, I caught S tossing them through our kitchen window. I went to their place to confront her, only for Mil to get mad at me. She told my husband to make me apologize to S, even though I saw it happen with my own eyes. That was when I realized S had the whole family wrapped around her little pinky. Jump ahead to 2020. The siblings were all in their mid to late 20s. S, Bill 1, and Bill 2 were still living with Mil, who was only charging them $200 each to cover rent, utilities, and groceries. Mil still felt guilty over the divorce, so she basically shouldered more than half the monthly bills while her grown kids lived it up like they were in college. Seriously, it was non-stop partying. That same summer, Mil couldn't even afford shoes for work, while S went on a week-long trip abroad without blinking. Then, like the rest of the world, our lives shifted when the pandemic hit. Mil lost her job for good. With no income, she turned to her adult children for help while she searched for work. And yes, I'm saying adult children because at some point, you're supposed to help your parents, especially when they've already helped you your whole life. The plan wasn't for them to support her forever. Just long enough for her to land back on her feet. It seemed fair. Bill 1 wasn't thrilled, but once you sit him down and lay out the logic, he usually gets it. Bill 2, being the easygoing guy he is, just went with the flow. S, though? Different story. After 5 months, she suddenly packed up and left to live with her boyfriend. No warning, no family meeting, just threw her stuff in a bag and said, "I'm too young to take care of you, Mommy. I've got my own life to live." Meanwhile, all 3 brothers, my husband included, were splitting the cost of supporting their mom. But in S's version of reality, she'd been carrying the entire load by herself. She was so exhausted, she couldn't take it anymore. That's why she left behind her dog, for Mil to take care of, with no money, no food, nothing. We were stunned. Not only had she lived with Mil for nearly 2 years while barely contributing, but she also got handed opportunities most people only dream of. Mil used a personal connection to get her a job right after high school, no resume, no interview. And when she needed a car, Mil, my husband, and I bought her one. We never expected to see a dime back, and surprise, S never offered to pay us a single cent. Without Mil's help, she'd have had nothing. And what does she do? Ditches Mil when she needs help the most, which eventually leads to Mil losing her apartment. Now, the rest of the family had already gotten used to S's nonsense. But her boyfriend? He wasn't built for that kind of chaos. After a particularly ugly fight, he kicked her out. She came crawling back to Mil, crying, and guess what Mil did? She took her back in. No questions, no lectures. Just open arms. I was disgusted. Bill 1 had already moved in with his girlfriend. Bill too stepped up big time. He found a place and let Mill stay with him, since she had nowhere else to go. But somehow, S ended up sleeping on his couch. And me? I'm just the daughter-in-law, so apparently I don't get a say in any of this. I voiced my frustrations to my husband, of course, but he's got a soft heart, especially when it comes to his mom and sister. So he and Mill helped S find her own apartment, since Bill too couldn't house her forever. Then get this, after she gets evicted again for being a nightmare tenant, my husband and Mill go through the whole process again to find her a new place. I even handed S $700 straight out of my personal savings to cover the deposit. Now we're getting to the part that really matters. We loaned S that $700 in the summer of 2022, and she promised to pay it back in $100 chunks each month. Promised is the key word here. Because in reality, we didn't see a single dollar. Month after month, she came up with a new excuse. I had to replace my car battery. The doctor bill was higher than I expected. I needed another new battery for my car. Wait a minute, didn't she already say that? Yep. She actually used the car battery excuse twice. At that point, I'd already accepted the fact that I was never going to see that money again. We're not wealthy people, but we're not selfish either. When family needs help, we do what we can. And most of the time, we don't even get a thank you in return. So yeah, when S conveniently forgot her loan, I didn't push it. What stung more was watching her drop money on expensive crap every week: fancy nails, take-out lunches that cost $20 a pop, and flaunt it all in front of Mill, who was still unemployed 2 years after losing her job. And you know what else? S would show up at Mill's place during her lunch breaks, sit down with her little sushi bento boxes, and never offer Mill even a bite. That brings us to the great $10 drama. Mill was still living with Bill too, and he was starting to lose patience. Even though all three brothers were helping out financially, he was the one who had to actually live with her. That meant no dating life, no space, no privacy. He was stuck walking Mill's dog in S's abandoned mutt, and footing the bill for extra electricity and transportation. You might be wondering, was S helping out? Nope. In her mind, she was offering emotional support. Every once in a blue moon, S would invite Mill over for a sleepover on her couch. But by the next morning, she'd ship her right back to Bill 2's apartment. No real help. No permanent solution. Just pretending like she was doing her part. Meanwhile, Bill 2 was out here doing everything for everyone: Mill, the pets, even cleaning up S's mess. The sad part in all this? Mill actually looked forward to those occasional sleepovers with S. Even though we all knew they just sat on the couch binge-watching Netflix, Mill saw it as special mother-daughter bonding time. Bill 2, on the other hand, wasn't thrilled about the obvious favoritism. So on one of these rare nights when Mill was at S's apartment, she found herself short on cash. She needed toothpaste and some dog food for the animals, so she asked S if she could spare $10. We found out about this because, about half an hour later, my husband got a phone call from S. He put it on speaker so I could hear the whole circus unfold. S started the call all dramatic. "Something's gotta give with mommy," she said. My husband asked, "What's going on now? Is she being difficult or something?" S sighed like the world was ending. "No, I just can't deal with her asking for money anymore." Hubby was confused but calm. "Okay, what happened?" And then she dropped the bomb about Mill asking for $10 measly. 10. My husband blinked in disbelief. S went on a rant about how she was done and couldn't handle this anymore. And my husband, trying to keep it light, said, "Really, S? $10 is going to break you?" Well, that set her off. She started rolling out excuses like it was a grocery list. Asterisk, "I've got a car loan to pay." Hubby, "No, you don't. We helped mom buy that car outright for you." Asterisk, "I have car insurance every month." Hubby, "What? That's usually a yearly thing." Asterisk, "I have utilities to take care of." Hubby, "S, your rent includes utilities." Asterisk, "Well, I had to pay for Netflix." Us, seriously? That's your defense? At that point, my husband was losing patience. But he's been dealing with S for years, and he knew if he blew up, she'd just shut down and play victim. So instead, he shifted into Big Brother mode and tried giving her advice. He said, "Okay, S, look. It sounds like you're struggling with money management. Mill isn't wrong to ask for $10, she's not asking for a loan, just a bit of help." But S just kept making excuses. "I need gas for my car." My husband rolled his eyes and said, "Fine, but the bigger issue here is that whenever the family needs help, you never seem to have money. Yet somehow, you always have enough for sushi lunches and online shopping." S immediately snapped back, "What I do with my money is none of your business." Hubby tried to stay calm. "I'm not trying to start a fight, I'm saying maybe it's time to budget better. So let me ask, how much do you make a week?" Silence. He asked again. Finally, she mumbled, like, for something. You mean $450? He asked. S reluctantly admitted, yeah. So hubby pulled out our good old Excel budget template, the same one we've used for years, and started building a mock budget to help her. He asked how much she had left over for the week. S replied, not enough to give mommy $10. At that point, hubby was like, you've got to be kidding me. But he stayed respectful, just asked her to stop being so defensive. And that's when she completely lost it. S exploded, saying hubby had no right to make her feel guilty. If she said she didn't have $10, that should be the end of the conversation. Why was everyone always ganging up on her? Why was she always the punching bag, despite everything she's done for Mill? According to her, she was the hero for letting Mill sleep on her couch once in a while and use the Netflix she barely paid for. My husband clapped back, wow, thanks so much. Because of you, mommy didn't have to sleep on a park bench. And S fired back, maybe she should. I'm not her mother. I've got my own life and my own money. If I want sushi for lunch every day, I deserve that. That's when my husband hit her with the truth. You can afford sushi every day, but not once have you even attempted to repay the $700 loan we gave you for that apartment you're living in. Her final words? You know what? You and mommy can screw off. I'm done with this family. She hung up. 2 minutes later, I got a notification from my bank. Remember all the months of excuses? All the time she said she was broke and struggling? Turns out, she had the money the whole time. Yep. She sent me the full $700. She could have paid us back at any point, but she chose not to, probably thought she never would. That was already infuriating, but it wasn't even the worst part. Mill called soon after. Apparently, S had just told her that she transferred $50 to Mill's account and that it would be the last $50 Mill would ever see. She ended the call with a cheerful little "have a nice life," and told Mill never to contact her again. Naturally, my husband was beyond angry. The level of manipulation was off the charts. He tried to call S to give her a piece of his mind, but she had already blocked him everywhere. Later, he sat down with Mill and walked her through the budget he created for S, trying to make sense of her claim that she only made $450 a week. That's when Mill, looking confused, said, wait, what? S doesn't make $450. She makes $650 a week. I swear, I nearly fell off the couch. She lied to my husband again just to get out of handing Mill a lousy $10 bill. At that moment, even Mill had to admit that S didn't care about anyone but herself. It was heartbreaking for her, because S is her only daughter, but enough was enough. So hubby and Mill agreed to cut contact. If S didn't need her family, fine, she wouldn't have them. And that could have been the end of it. But, of course, it wasn't. About a week later, Bill too called us. Guess what? Mill was babysitting S's new dog. Not the dog S had already dumped on him. A new dog. Apparently, the moment Mill saw S's name pop up on her phone, she picked up like nothing had happened. This was 4 months ago now, and somehow S and Mill are back to being besties like she never told her own mother to sleep on the street. No apology. No explanation. Just vibes. As for us? S still has my husband blocked on everything. I guess we're still the villains here for daring to hold her accountable. But wait, there's more. Update. It's been a while since that whole $10 blow-up with S. You know, the one where she ghosted us because we dared to suggest she was acting selfish. Well, I've got an update, and it's honestly too ridiculous not to share. Apparently, just 1 week after she told Mill to kick rocks, S started cozying back up to her again. And together, they started plotting to move in together once S's lease ended in June. But by April, Bill too had had enough. After nearly 2 years of letting Mill live with him, he wanted his house and his privacy back. The poor guy just wanted to be able to vape, sip whiskey, maybe have a date night or two without his mom eavesdropping. He wanted to choke the chicken in peace without Mill snoring down the hall. But when he asked Mill for an update, she had no answer. Turns out, Mill had asked S what the plan was, and S didn't take it well. First, she called Bill too and told him, in no uncertain terms, to stay out of her business. Then she blocked him on every platform. A week later, she told Mill that she was too toxic to live with and that she was cutting her off again. Just like that. S said she'd no longer be moving in and, in fact, was going no contact with the whole family. Again. Mill was devastated and cried to my husband, but honestly? We just rolled our eyes. We'd seen this show before. Then, this past Saturday, Bill too got a random bank notification. Someone had deposited $50 into his account. He was confused, so he waited to see what it was about. An hour later, his phone rang from an unknown number. It was S. Apparently, she had bummed $50 off their dad, Phil, and instead of getting it herself, she told Phil to send it to Bill 2's account without even asking him first. Because in S's world, everyone else is just a side character in her own personal drama. So after everything, S unblocked Bill 2, but only for one reason. She messaged him just long enough to bark out orders, telling him to withdraw that $50 immediately because she planned to swing by and pick it up from his apartment. Bill 2? He couldn't stop laughing. Literally burst out into laughter mid-call and didn't even have the energy to tell her off. He just hung up on her. Right after that, he called my husband to vent. And since our dear father-in-law, Phil, hadn't bothered to wish either of them a happy birthday this year, they both decided they'd use that $50 as a gift from good old deadbeat dad. Perfect excuse to grab some drinks for the party we were throwing for their uncle, who had just flown in from Europe. That party was yesterday. It was a good one. Everyone came together to eat, drink, and catch up. Everyone except Phil, of course. It was Mill's side of the family, so no love lost there. S and I were invited too, but I couldn't make it because I'd caught a nasty cold. And man, do I wish I'd gone anyway. When my husband got back, he was cracking up. Turns out, S had been blowing up Bill 2's phone all day, desperate to get that $50. He eventually caved and told her to come by at noon 2 hours before the party started. His plan was to avoid inviting her altogether without being rude. But this is S we're talking about. Her Royal Highness does things on her own time. So naturally, she showed up right in the middle of the party. People were grilling, laughing, having a blast, without her. And she didn't like that one bit. Their uncle, bless him, didn't know the full story and felt bad. He invited her to stay and grab a plate of food, but S dramatically declined and said she had other places to be. Then she huffed off to her car and sped away in a dramatic cloud of dust. According to my husband, people spent the next hour talking about how awful she turned out to be. They sympathized with the brothers, especially Bill 2, for having to put up with her constant drama. But nobody said a word to Mill. It was pretty clear to everyone where S had picked up those tendencies. The cherry on top? Bill 1 got a message from S not long after she left. She asked if Bill 2 and my husband had invited him to the party. He said yes. Big mistake. S went off. She sent a voice note ranting about how much she hated all her brothers and even their mother. She cried about how no one in the family appreciated her, how everyone treated her like garbage. But she ended it with the classic "not that I care," which we all know means she cared deeply. Oh, and she referred to all of us as fat and dull. Real classy. Honestly, how could she expect to be invited to anything when she's the one who cut everyone off? It wasn't much, but man, karma sure is satisfying sometimes. Update 2. It's 2 a.m. as I write this, and someone is at my window. No, seriously. Someone is at my window. Let me back up. I hadn't heard a peep from S since the party 2 weeks ago. But apparently, her dramatic little performance that day left quite the impression on my husband's uncle. Before flying back home on Tuesday, he wanted to know everything. So hubby and I sat down and gave him the full rundown, digging all the way back to the chaos that started in August 2022. And trust me, it was a lot. I hesitated to share this part, but you know what? Writing it out is therapeutic. Reddit's been like a journal for all the craziness this little rock I live on throws at us. So let's rewind. Back when the whole $10 fiasco happened, S and my husband were still on okay terms. She'd gone through what she called bad luck. I call it karma with a side of reality check. She'd been dumped, evicted, and just generally hit a wall in life. So being the good big brother he is, my husband stepped in and helped her find a place to live. It was just 10 minutes from our home so we could keep an eye on her. And yep, we loaned her $700 out of my personal savings to secure that apartment before she got kicked out of the last one. A young woman living alone in our city isn't ideal, even if the building itself was in a safe area. Hubby was worried. But not even 2 weeks after she moved in, she was calling my husband for everything. Her internet wasn't working. The toilet wouldn't flush. The light bulb needed changing. She even called once because she couldn't find the TV remote. That last one sounds like a joke, right? I wish it was. But no, she actually did call once to ask if hubby could bring her bottled water because she didn't feel like going to the store. She wasn't sick. She just didn't want to leave her couch. Eventually, hubby started ignoring her messages. So naturally, the messages multiplied. I guess in her mind, if you say no 40 times and yes once, that counts as a yes forever. Then one night, around 1:30 a.m., our phone rang. And you already know nothing good ever happens at 1:30 in the morning. I immediately braced for the worst. I started mentally checking if I had a black dress for a funeral. Wondered if I needed to borrow one of my grandma's dramatic church hats with feathers and netting. Typical Caribbean funeral fashion. But no, it wasn't death. It was just Hubby almost hung up right away, but he answered. Turns out, she was calling in a panic. She said there was someone outside her window. She was dozing off on the couch while watching some mind-numbing reality show, probably Love Island or Love is Blind, both of which make my brain itch, but she suddenly heard knocking at the front door. When she peeked through the window, she saw a shadow. Then another knock. So she ran to her bedroom, but the noise followed. She was now hiding under the blankets, whispering into the phone, terrified, claiming she could hear someone rustling in the bushes. Hubby asked if she'd called the police. She hesitated, then said, "Why should I? Can't you just come over?" I yelled from across the bed, "Call the police." What did she think hubby was gonna do? Morph into some medieval warrior and charge into the night with a tire iron? But then she started crying. And of course, my husband caved, because he's a good man, sometimes too good. And me? My dumb self decided to go with him. Why? Well, I'm 5 feet 10 inches, built like I was forged in a blacksmith's shop, and not afraid of much. But I did lay down one rule: had to call the police. In my mind, we were only going there to sit in the car nearby until the cops showed up. It was dumb. But when you care about people, sometimes you do dumb things. So we pulled up to her duplex, which is next to her landlord's house. Hubby called to say we were outside. And of course, tells us to come in. Excuse me? That would require crossing about 20 yards of pitch-black yard with a possible intruder out there. Hubby said no. He wasn't going to drag me out into the night for that. So what does suggest? Oh, just leave her in the car, then. Yeah. Let that sink in. Hubby stared at his phone like it had grown mold. There was no way that was happening. He asked again if she'd called the police. Silence. I stared at my husband, he stared right back at me, and I just had to ask, what happened? Did the shadow reach in through the window and snatch her voice box? Claimed she tried calling the police, but no one picked up. Yeah, okay. Hubby and I looked at each other like, she really thinks we're this stupid? She was trying to sell us a whole goat and we weren't buying a single hoof. My husband told her, again, to try calling. He hung up. And literally not even 30 seconds later, she called back saying, nobody answered. She gave up that fast. Hubby was fuming. You think you're gonna get a police response in under 30 seconds? What, did the line hiccup and that's your proof? He couldn't believe it. Got all defensive and insisted there was no point in calling again because they never come anyway. That was the last straw for me. I grabbed my phone, dialed the police myself, and guess what? They picked up on the second ring. I calmly gave them the information had rambled to us, and they told me someone would be dispatched right away. Turns out there'd already been a burglary on her street earlier that week, so this wasn't some paranoid fantasy, there was real reason for concern. When hubby called to tell us what the police had said, she started sobbing again. But then she hit us with a new request: can you walk around the apartment? See if the guy's still out there? I'm sorry, what? I had joked about the tire wrench earlier, but apparently she thought that was a real option. Now, yes, my husband is a big guy. Tall, solid build, red hair that practically glows in the dark, and a chin sharp enough to make Gaston cry. But that doesn't make him Batman. He wasn't about to go stomping around in the dark looking for some creeper possibly hiding in the bushes at 2 in the morning. We spotted the landlord's outdoor floodlights, they were off, but aimed directly at S's backyard. Hubby figured if we could get the landlord to turn them on, the light would scare off whoever might be out there. But S said, I can't call my landlord at 2 a.m. That would be so rude. I swear to God, I almost snapped. Rude? Rude? What did she think calling us was? Are we bats? Did she think it was just fine to wake us up and drag us out of bed to go play Ghostbusters, but calling her landlord to turn on a damn light would be too much? People always talk about hitting their breaking point, and I think I finally understood what that feels like in that moment. It wasn't a sudden outburst, it was this slow, burning splinter followed by a sharp crack inside your chest. A kind of mental snap. I was stunned. This entitled grown woman had the audacity to say she called my husband not to talk, not for support, but because she assumed he'd come scare away the intruder. With what? A glow stick? The grill from the car? My umbrella? What if the guy had a knife? Or a gun? Then, just to top it all off, she told my husband to stop being *TCH and just go walk around the yard already. And that's when we were done. We turned the car around and left. She must have called us a couple dozen more times on the way home. At one point, we thought she'd finally gone quiet, maybe the intruder got her, or maybe she passed out crying. Either way, silence. But nope. She eventually called again. By that time, the police had come, woke up the landlord, checked everything out. No signs of anyone lurking around. But they did notice the front gate had been tampered with and told the landlord it needed fixing. Turns out, the neighbor in the unit right next to S's had their sneaky link over that night. The guy probably just knocked on the wrong door. That was it. And how did S react? She was furious that I'd called the police. Said I made her look ridiculous in front of her landlord. Claimed I'd wasted the officer's time. Complained that now her landlord thought she was high maintenance. She told my husband that if only I had stayed home and he had just walked around like she'd asked, everything would have been fine. Let that sink in. This woman was totally prepared to send my husband, her own brother, into a dark yard at 2 a.m. to face a possible intruder, armed with God knows what. And why? Because she couldn't be bothered to use her phone to call the police or wake up the landlord. But she had no issue dragging us into her mess, risking our safety, and then turning around and blaming us when she didn't get the fairy tale rescue mission she expected. Needless to say, ever since she cut us off, it's been amazing. We're 6 months deep into this no-contact bliss, and honestly, we're thriving. No more midnight calls, no more fake emergencies, no more drama. It's peaceful. So peaceful, in fact, that we've decided to make this silence a permanent thing. S may have cut us off, but we're the ones finally feeling free.